I want to sort of start where Ambassador left off, and I just want to add that the way this is going to work is I have a number of questions, but I will ask the first two, and then what I would like to have is that you pick up questions from the floor on that specific issue or issues related to the topic that we are on at that time. The first question I wanted to pose to both ambassadors, Ambassador Menon, you just mentioned in your statement that one of the reasons that small island states don't have a voice is because of lack of self-sufficiency. And I just wondered, given the diversity of the small island states, that some really don't even have the capacity to attend meetings regularly, how do you really expect them to be self-sufficient? And I'm going to probably start with Chris, since you brought this up in the first place. I think it's on.
In responding to that question, I'm going to be a little bit more positive. I think that there are really many difficulties and constraints for the small states operating at the UN. But I somehow think that, and actually Ambassador Menon did refer to this, but if you're a small delegation, you really need to choose your issues that correspond to some of your national interests. You just can't do everything. And if you choose one or two issues and then work not necessarily on your own, but in collaboration with other delegations, there's a great chance that you can actually be making a significant contribution to the formulation of the policy or the agenda. I'll cite just one example, climate change. Ambassador Menon did indicate that Barbados, that we are very involved in the debate there. The answer is yes, we are a small delegation, but because of our involvement, we've been recognized for making contributions to the debate. We've been invited to join what is called a group of friends on climate change at the UN. And we found that last year, when we actually, it was about 18 months ago, when we were preparing for the main session of the UNFCCC in Bali. This would have been December of 2007. We actually were able to insist and to contribute to the decision that called for the establishment of 4 main pillars, which would be the plank for the negotiations. And one of those, adaptation, we actually ensured that adaptation became one of the pillars. Many of the developed countries, they saw mitigation as very important, and I wouldn't want to be misunderstood. Mitigation is important, but the climate change issue, we felt that was so relevant to us today, now, that adaptation to what is going on really was much more relevant. So basically what I'm saying is, yes, small delegations, but choose your issues, focus on them, and collaborate. And this is where you really need to move forward with great confidence, because you should not be, be afraid of the developed partners representatives. Speak with them, collaborate with them, and you actually do have a chance to make an input and influence the outcome. Thank you.
Ambassador Menon? I think you're on. Hello, am I on? Yes, just press the green. It should be green.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I mean, I think Chris has given a very good answer to that question, but let me just follow up by making an additional point. It won't be easy for a small state, especially a state that has difficulty attending meetings, to develop its capacity overnight. Point is overnight. I don't expect anyone to become self-sufficient over a short period of time. But I think the problem also at the UN, which I've come to notice during my stay there, is that a lot of countries become increasingly dependent and totally dependent almost on what the UN can provide in terms of assistance and help. We develop what I call a crutch mentality. You say, look, I mean, the UN is giving me help in this area and that area, and they don't really make an effort to wean themselves off that kind of assistance that is provided by the UN. And that doesn't help at all. I've seen that too often. I mean, it happened I'm not going to name countries, I'm not going to name issues, but the point is it happens too often. They think the UN is like an ATM machine about to dispense money, continuously dispensing money for the rest of their lives. It's not going to happen. At some point, people are going to be tired, and in a situation like today, when you have the financial crisis, countries will think twice. I mean, they don't have enough money to spend at home. They're not going to spend money on somebody else. So I think we've got to get off that crutch mentality. And I I say this because I come from a country which started off on independence, becoming dependent on the UN. I mean, or rather, turning to the UN for assistance. We turned to the United Nations Development Program in 1965 because we didn't know how to go about developing our economy immediately after breaking away from Malaysia. Because we didn't have interland, we didn't have resources, and we didn't know how to go about developing the economy. We called in the UNDP for help. They sent us a consultant, a Dutchman, a chap called Albert Winsemius, who gave the then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew a lot of advice. He told Lee Kuan Yew, look, why are you moping? He says, why are you worried about failing? Because you have the best opportunity now to do things you couldn't do before. You're independent, you're no longer dependent on anyone for help. Let's make something out of nothing. And I think together with Albert Winsemius and the Singapore government working with him, hand in glove, you found we did something out of nothing. In over 10 years, you find the Singapore economy grew from a third world state to I think a middle income economy, and I think it's gone on to do much better over the years. My point is really, but we never constantly, we never sort of said, okay, we're going to rely on the UNDP for help all the time. We took the advice they gave us, and at some point, we dropped them. We might go back to them for advice occasionally, but we never said we were expecting the UNDP to be there all the time to help us. And I think the small states at the UN adopt that kind of approach. I know it's not easy, because sometimes they're located in some place thousands of miles away in the Pacific Ocean with no neighboring island or landmass to look at. But I think the point is, if you take that approach that you can make something out of nothing, then I think everybody can succeed at the UN.
Thank you very much. In the year 2000, when the first review came for the 1994 conference, one of the things that came out of that were you had something like 500 projects that were identified from all the small island developing states. And those were, the idea was that you would put forward projects, and those projects would find funding, and then those projects would all be related to some vulnerability within a small island state. However, not very much has happened with those projects. And I'm just wondering, when you talk about small island states moving forward, particularly at this stage, what has happened to all those projects? And how can we make sure that those projects are still funded, bearing in mind what you've just said, at the same time that you need to look at self-sufficiency?
Thank you, Moderator, for that question, because it is an issue that has been of real concern to many of the countries of AOSIS ever since really 2004, when we had the first 5-year review of the Barbados Program of Action coming out of the conference in 1994. Yes, quite a number of projects were prepared relating to several of the issues that were in the Program of Action, actually 14 issues, and as you say, there may be close to 100 projects or so. One of the real difficulties, and this continues to be a challenge, is we found that the political partners, the development partners, actually did not deliver on what they indicated they would do. This goes to the general debate about the percentage of ODA that development partners said that they would give, the 0.7, and not many of them have been able, for I guess a number of reasons back at home, have been able to meet what they said they would provide. So the question of the implementation of the Barbados Program of Action continues to be to fall behind as far as attracting financing from some of the major donors. Having said that, I wouldn't want to give the impression that nothing much has been done, because a number of the AOSIS members, and I can speak knowing the experience of some within the Caribbean, they've actually been able to implement some elements of those projects within the context of their own national development plans, where sustainable development has become an important component of the plan. So yes, difficulties in not being able to implement many of the projects, not enough financing has been made available, but I take the opportunity to emphasize that a number of the governments have in fact small island developing states governments have actually taken the opportunity to implement within the context of their national development plan some elements of those projects.